Address shortages in local childcare have been put on the table. Greater Mankato Growth is spearheading an effort to eventually provide parents affordable options. Aaron Stuvey reports on where the plan stands now and what comes next for area industry leaders.
In an effort to address shortcomings in the local child care sector, Greater Mankato Growth has partnered with the Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation to create the Child Care Solutions Activation Plan. The plan has three options to address gaps that affect families and employers alike. The first is to establish a dedicated group to take charge of the industry. The Mankato Area Child Care Association would be responsible for community awareness campaigns, provider engagement, coordination between groups, and distributing grant funding. The second option is to invest in the child care workforce pipeline. That would put money towards education opportunities, internships, stipends, and outreach. The third and final option would establish a shared community space to target underserved areas in the community and host specialized care options that may not be offered at many facilities in the area. One or more of the options could be selected, but they wouldn't be without cost.
If we were to implement everything that Jeff Andrews suggested today, it would cost $273,000. So we're going to need to figure out how we do that and which one of these things that as a community and as the organizations in the community that we want to focus on.
The plan is being worked on by representatives from GMG, cities of Mankato and North Mankato, the Mankato area foundations, and members of local child care industry. The options will be discussed at a meeting on January 14th, where a plan forward will be further solidified. In Mankato, I'm Aaron Stuvey.